price of 0.83 per share with a 22% premium and 21% discount. As the final step, they did a capital reduction exercise, and here the remaining shares held by the minority was offered at 1.30 with a 56.6 premium on the exit price. And they reaffirmed that they do not have any hidden agendas towards the Tanks Plaza. But however, out of 75% of the minority shareholders, only 39 agreed with this, and the reason for this was undervaluation of the Tanks Plaza property. Over to you, Tavidu.
Thank you, Vijay. In here, we are going to explain why the interest of controlling and minority shareholders may diverge.
No, I do not hear you properly. Who is talking now?
I'm Tavin, sir.
No, I didn't get you. Can you repeat your name?
How we do?
Ravindra.
How we do?
Ravindra. What is your CPM number?
So,
No, I don't get your identity.
Sir, it's Tavindu. Tavindu Imanda.
Kavindu.
Tavindu, sir.
Can you just type it? What is his CPM number? I need a CPM number of all the presenters with the name, because I have been asked to check all these because you have been instructed to make sure that all the basic logistic arrangements are conducive for the presentation. Okay, go ahead.
Here, we are going to explain why the interest of controlling and minority shareholders. Controlling shareholders mean that majority shareholders have more than 50% of the shares in the company. The case that can be and brothers, holding 69.8%. Secret shareholders, remaining shares are owned by minority shareholders. They have little influence of corporate decision and CK10 has 500 minority shareholders. Reason for diversion is the interest of minority shareholders may lie in realizing a short-term gain on their investment. A goal which director may consider is not necessarily long-term best interest of the corporation. That is why minority shareholders are questioning the underestimation of the tax prices. Majority shareholders may not be the same as the interest of the corporation. The controlling shareholders may want the corporation to take certain action that may be not necessarily in the best interest of the corporation. In the case study, the 10 brothers and minority shareholders bargaining over how much capital was worth in the privatization by them over 5 years to reduce administrative burden and move towards director position. Moving on to the next slide, we are going to be non-executive directors concerned on the minority shareholders. In the given case, it was raised among the shareholders that the independent directors can report overlook the minor shareholders' interest and take concern to the interest of the tank family. According to the case, the directors have basically disregarded the responsibility they have towards the minor shareholders. An objective of independent directors is ensuring corporate governance of the company. Independent directors have the overall role is to resolve fraud, notification fraud, and future fraud. Safeguarding the interest of all stakeholders, particularly the minority shareholders, and balancing the conflict interest of stakeholders are two key responsibilities of independent directors. One of the core principles of corporate governance is that the independent directors will act on behalf of the shareholders, especially for the interest of the minority shareholders. Therefore, as independent directors who play their primary role in ensuring good corporate governance, they indirectly contribute to the fulfillment of the responsibilities to the minority shareholders.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Thavindu. The independence of the
What
board.
is your name?
Tihinisa.
Lean. Okay, Lean. What is your CPM number?
17668.
Sorry?
17668.
6, 17, 6.
68.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
The independence of the board during the third privatization attempt is questionable because doubt was raised about the independence and neutrality of the CEO of the company because he was personally related with the Tang's family. And also, the board recommended that the minority shareholders should accept the offer based on an evaluation provided by the independent financial advisor of PwC. Further, the board clearly knows that the current market price is higher than the offered price, which would reduce the wealth of the shareholders as well. So the agency problem arises here because shareholders express their disappointment with the independent directors because they fail to clarify their redevelopment plans with Times Plaza after its privatization. So the valuation of the property was subject to the recommendations provided by the PwC's advisors. Since the chairman of the company is a former PwC partner, he also has an ability to influence this valuation process. So according to stewardship theory and the Code of Corporate Governance Principle 1 and 2 of Singapore, the board of directors has a fiduciary duty towards its shareholders and act independently. But in this CK Tank company, they have go against these principles. So over to you, Benjamin.
Thank you, Lini. So there has been back and forth argument between
Benjamin, so just tell me your CPM number before starting the presentation.
17325.
325. Okay, Benjamin.
Shall I start? So there has been back and forth conflict between the minority shareholders and the company regarding the valuation of the property, whether it was accurate or not. So according to the law of Singapore, it has been clearly mentioned that the property should be valued based on its existing use. Based on the existing use, the company has valued the property is worth 340 million. But the minority shareholders has been telling that it should at least worth 400 million based on the existing use. So the real question here is whether the company has considered all its existing use. If the company has not considered its all income sources when valuing the property, then the property valuation would be unfair legally. Next, let's move to the ethical part. As we all know, the share price of the company is impacted by the future performance of the company, and the redevelopment of the company will directly impact the future performance of the company. So the issue here is whether the company can actually redevelop the property or not. If the company does not have a good cash strength, or if the company does not have the ability to finance the property, finance the redevelopment, it is fair not to consider the redevelopment. But if the company has good cash strength and if it has the ability to redevelop also, then if they did not redevelop, that shows that it has been done intentionally, which clearly which makes the valuation unfair ethical. According to the reporting principles in global governance, it clearly mentions that all the material information should be disclosed. In this situation, we can clearly see that the board has not clearly disclosed all the material information regarding the redevelopment, which raises a concern regarding the materiality and reporting of the organization. Over to you, Mitma.
Thank you, Benjamin. So I'm Mitma and my CPM is 17651.
651, Mitma, right? Okay, Mitma.
Yeah.
Proceed.
So with regards to the privatization episode, various improvements that would help protect minority shareholders in the future could be recommended. So here we have come up with few suggestions under 4 main aspects. So as you can see in the slide, the first aspect is boosting confidence in the minority stakeholders. So 2 suggestions can be made with regards to the methods of privatization. So if we consider the scheme of arrangement method, it doesn't allow the offering party to vote in the case of privatizing a company, but the other 2 methods do allow. So we suggest not to allow the offering party to vote, since otherwise the minority shareholders who only hold an insignificant portion of the ownership of the company will be at disadvantage. So fortunately, the voluntary delisting method implemented the exemption of offering party voting in 2019. Our second suggestion under this same aspect is that the independent financial advisor's opinion on the exit offer should consist of both fairness and reasonableness. This opinion was considered only under the scheme of arrangement method until 2019, when the voluntary delisting method also started considering fairness in addition to the reasonableness. The second aspect is the establishment of investors' unions. So in the CK Tank's case, the Securities Investors Association is established only at a national level. We recommend allowing the establishment of investors' union at company level through setting up a framework facilitating such establishments to facilitate and secure the prospective minority stake in companies. And the third aspect is including statements for minority shareholder protection in the company's internal documents. So we recommend setting favorable pronouncements for the minority stake in the articles of association would assure protection of the company's minority stakeholders. As per the ninth principle of the Singapore Code of Corporate Governance, Risk Management and Internal Controls, the board can include internal controls such as appointing lead independent directors when the chairman is offended of his independence, appointment of independent experts only under the consent of all shareholders, and etc. in its internal documents itself. The last and the fourth aspect is the appointment of unbiased and independent experts and directors. So complying with the Singaporean corporate governance principle related to chairmen and CEOs, a lead independent director can be appointed where the chairman's independence is questionable. Uh, Such a directive is available for shareholders when they have a concern for which communication with the communication with the chairman or the director via normal channels is inadequate. Further, experts such as financial advisors and valuers must be selected with the consent of both the majority and the minority shareholders. For their title of independent must not be limited to mere words, but must be proved through action. Over to you, Ken.
So my name is Callum. My CPM is 17568.
568. Okay, Callum.
Thank you, Mitma. So in this case, CK Tank has used three different methods in their privatization attempts. In our last question, we are required to explain about these different methods and pros and cons of these methods from the viewpoint of majority shareholders who intend to delist the company and minor shareholders who intend that company may listed. The first one is scheme of arrangement. A scheme of arrangement is a legislative procedure allowing a company to be delisted under the Companies Act of Singapore. A scheme meeting for shareholders will be required under this method. Approval threshold for the scheme meeting is 75% majority of total shares held by independent shareholders. If the scheme meeting gets approved by the statutory majority, the company has to bring the approved scheme to the High Court for the approval. The second one is voluntary unconditional cash offer. A voluntary offer is an offer for the voting shares of the company and does not trigger the conditions that require mandatory offer. This voluntary offer must be unconditional, conditional until it receives the level of acceptances which is more than 50%. This offer becomes unconditional when the offering party obtains more than 50% acceptances. The third one is voluntary delisting proposal. This method seeks shareholders' approval at an EGM. This resolution for the delisting proposal must be approved by at least 75% of total shares held by shareholders and must not be voted against 10 or more of total shares held by shareholders. Moving to the next slide. Now let me explain pros and cons relevant to these methods. When considering the first method, scheme of arrangement, we have identified following factors. When the High Court approves the scheme, it is binding on all shareholders. There is no chance of minor shareholders being stuck as shareholders in a delisted company. It's an advantage for the offering party. But major shareholders who are looking to privatize the company may be disadvantaged because they have to abstain from the voting. In this method, an independent financial advisor's opinion on the scheme is required. This opinion is provided on both fairness and reasonableness of exit offer. Therefore, it helps to minor shareholders to take their decisions. But if the scheme gets approved, minority who believes the offer is not fair have to accept that offer because approval on the court binds on all shareholders. In voluntary unconditional cash offer method, in a situation where offering party obtains 90% acceptances of total shares, he can exercise the right to compulsorily acquire the remaining shares. The company can make a general offer to the rest of the shareholders to buy their shares. It's an advantage to the offering party. However, in this method, there is a chance of minority shareholders being stuck in a delisted company because 90% acceptances may not receive in every time. In this method, there is no mandatory requirement to accept the offer. Therefore, minority who believes the current offer is not fair can retain their shares. And then, an independent financial advisor will be engaged to assess the reasonableness of the exit offer, but they do not assess the fairness of the exit offer. It's a disadvantage. In voluntary delisting proposal method, offering shareholders can also vote on the proposal. It's an advantage, but there is a chance of minority shareholders being stuck in a delisted company as well. In this method, if minority shareholders believe current offer is not fair and they hold at least 10% of total shares of the company, they can fail this resolution by voting against the proposal. But minor shareholders may lose their power in the vote because offering party can also involve to the vote. Over to you, Govindu.
Thank you, Kalum. So I am Govindu, CPM number 17718. So now let me quickly restate what we've been just discussing. The Singaporean venture CK Tang Limited owns a history of 9 odd decades, whose governance mechanism is followed as the Asian family-based model. 3 separate share buyback attempts were executed for the motive of delisting the company amidst the dilemmas regarding the Tansa Plaza, one of the significant properties of the business, on its valuations, plus the objections from the minority stake. The company has a unitary structured board with an affiliation of non-executive directors whose pivotal endeavor is noticed as securing the corporate governance of the company, followed with safeguarding the minority rights. The scenario makes the shareholders feel skeptic about the independence of their agents, plus whether they actually follow the fiduciary duty of achieving the shareholder wealth maximization pursuit. The controversy also arose with the property valuation in terms of legally and ethical infringements. The aggrieved minority could broaden their potential and boost confidence if better established regulations, frameworks, along with the expert objectivity is kept enforced. If I step back to the 3 privatization attempts mentioned, the scheme of arrangement seems to be more reclusive and preferable for the shareholders as it secures the verdict of the majority irreversibly with a court approval, while the voluntary delisting and the voluntary conditional offer leaves space for the minority to object till the offer gets revoked by the proposing party. Moreover, declaration of favorable terms by the Singaporean Monetary Authority in 2019 has not only sharpened the method of scheme of arrangement, but also made a better societal perception as a privatization vehicle. If I conclude the presentation saying if an independent majority exists in a company, promulgating strengthened protections and controls and mitigating conflict of interest, automatically the public vision, the public trust, the public perception would enhance so as the prospective investors who would probably be the minority shareholders in the near future, along with achievements of the corporate goals. It all boils down with the fact of achieving good governance and taking the company towards the next paradigm in terms of governance. Thank you very much for your valuable attention and time. We hope that you have broadened acquaintance on the privatization pursuit and the other corporate governance concepts. So enjoy the evening.
Sir, we can't hear you.
I think you are in mute.
You're on mute.
So you're on mute. So
So I think you are in mute.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't read the message and I have muted. All right, but I was just telling you. Actually, yes, nice presentation, but we don't have the time to talk much. But I will ask few questions. Before asking few questions, technical things. In your group, there are 10 members, only 7 presented. Accordingly, Vipuli, that is 17,660. Is that correct?
yes, sir.
Who is the second presenter? Because I did not hear what he or she.
It was Thavindu.
Kavindu.
He's Thavindu. Thavindu. Thavindu.
Tarin, what is the CPF number?
Avindu.
It's 17095, sir.
17095. Tarindu.
Yeah, Tavindu.
So I did not see him, like, I don't know. So is he there or not?
He is, yeah.
Okay. Then 70. Next one is Lihini, 17668.
Yes.
Just to double check. Benjamin, 17325. Mitma, 17651. Calum, 17568. Govindu, 17718. So who did not take part in the presentation? Sanduni?
Yes, sir. Sir, I am having. Hello?
Yeah.
Hello. Sir, my camera is not working. I am 17463.
Yeah, but you did not present even. So you were not prepared.
Yes.
I don't know because I have not, because the coordinator just instructed me to, like, gave me the guidelines for the presentation. Accordingly, all members should present. So you could not present. That is what. Anyway, so your reason is your camera is not working. I will mark it. The next one is Dharmaratnam. So Benjamin, he was there. Vipuli, Lirushi. Is he there? Is she there?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
What happened? So why weren't you assigned a task?
Sir, to be honest, we were under the impression that not everyone had to present. Due to the
Okay.
time constraint, we only made it several people. Yeah.
So okay, I just mark it here that you were present, but you bring this matter to the notice of the coordinator by sending an email, because I also may have misunderstood, because I am under the impression that everyone has to present. No worries. So you all manage it within the time. So who else? Then 9. So there is another member.
I think it's Madhushika.
Madhushi.
Madhushika.
Madhushika. Why didn't he present?
Same reason, sir. We
So is he there? So can I talk to him? Can I see Madhushika there?
Yeah.
Are you there? Madhushika.
Hello.
Okay, right, quickly. No worries
Yeah.
with these matters. And quickly, I will ask few questions. Actually, very interesting case, but the time is a problem. Okay, just skip. Um, According to, like, anybody can answer to these questions. Someone's mic is unmuted. Please mute your mics if you do not talk. Whose mic is that? Please, someone's mic is unmuted and unnecessary noises are coming. The question is, in this mainly in this privatization process, what category of stakeholders interest is more likely to be deprived, according to your understanding? Why?
The minority shareholders.
Yeah, the same thing, sir.
Which
Minority shareholders.
shareholders? Oh, I didn't get.
The same
The
thing
minority
you said.
shareholders.
Shareholders.
Why? Why minority shareholders? In
Because
what
the board of
way?
directors are responsible to, yes. So the board of directors are responsible to guide them and to provide guidance as a duty of them. So, but this has been deprived in this case. They have not taken care of the minority shareholders, but they have only considered the majority shareholders' opinions, and they have taken decisions based on their majority shareholders' interests.
And also the independence of the board is questionable because CEO of the company is a relative to Tang's brother, as well as the chairman is a former employee, the former partner of PwC. So that's another reason.
Just to add something, sir, the minority shareholders are basically short-term oriented and less power holding. So they expect a share dividend and a fair share price. So because of the trading purpose. So in those two circumstances, those share price have been relatively lower than the market price, if I'm not mistaken. So that has been an issue, although those associations and the security exchange regulations, as per the case, says that it's fair enough.
All right. So what are the evidences and facts that you can get? Like, show me, like now it says that minority shareholders' interests is likely to have been deprived. So now you explain how and why. Then, in order to happen it, so some part of the value of your corporation must have been transferred to the hands of fifth, right? So what are the evidences and facts that you have or just gathered or maybe interpreted? So you can come out to show us that this valuation is subjective, that particular process have favored a particular group or a party. Do you have any, or did you find any evidence, or your like if you did not find any evidence from the case, is there any interpretation or your analysis about the way the value has been transferred to the hands of fifth through the valuation process? In other words, valuation is not objective.
So the case clearly says that in the first attempt, they says that they have valued the shares at 0.42, where the shareholders knew that the price was low and they wanted more information anyway about the company's prospects. It was just with a premium of 35% and the discount was just 19.2. And if you refer the second attempts, again, they have offered the shares at 0.85 through the Kerith Holdings with a premium of 16.1 and a discount of 9.4. Again, there has been an undervaluation of the commercial property, that's Tangs Plaza. And only in the third attempt, they have offered their prices at 0.83 as I remember, with a 22% premium and 21% discount. So that's what it had been.
Okay, thank you very much for providing information. Actually, I have marked some question. Okay, yes, yeah.
In addition, sir, there
Anyone?
was evidence. So the property was by the company. The property was valued at 340 million, but based on the comparison nearby, the property was valued around 400 million. So there's a clear the minimum valuation should be around 400 million. So there's a pretty gap between the company valuation and the valuation considered by the 400 million valuation considered by the minority shareholder. So this also shares this deviation between the valuation also directly impacts the share price. So this is also can be reflected as an issue regarding the valuation.
Okay, good. And quick one or 2 points. One is about this mandatory offer issue. Like, so you all said something about the mandatory offer requirement or the legal provisions in Singapore. Wasn't it there, or what is the implication about this mandatory offer? Someone talk about the mandatory offer. So in case of valuation or the transfer of shares at a particular price, so they are in a situation where some related parties involvement value may have been transferred. So as a protection, most of securities exchanges, especially security exchange commissions, impose rules on mandatory offers. So someone talk about mandatory offer. I did not hear it properly. What was that fact? Maybe the last presenter. No, anyway.
Actually, sir, they do not use the mandatory offer method. They use the voluntary delegation proposal method for the last one, and second one is voluntary unconditional cash offer method. They did not use the mandatory offer method, sir.
Right. So
I think, sir, for at something recently I have searched their website, and I saw that in 2018 or 19 something they have used that mandatory offer. I think, sir, this case is still struggling about this fact. Recently, they have used this mandatory offer method.
Okay, thank you. So I'm asking a question. This outside of your facts. Like, don't worry if you do not know the answer for this thing, right? So, does anyone of your group have any idea about the ruling or the provisions of mandatory offer imposed by SEC in Sri Lanka? And if so, what's it? Here also, Sri Lanka is a paradise where the value can be easily transferred here and there, right? Through related party transaction arrangements, the market has become really a gambling place. Does anyone have a knowledge about the mandatory offer requirement imposed by SEC in Sri Lanka? Yes or no? It's okay. It seems like no worries that you are requested to check it. So that's very important. Here we have provisions and lots of requirements are there. For example, simply if a company acquires more than, as I remember, 10% stake or 10%, I can't remember the exact percentage. So they even by manipulating the prices, so they are required to give the average prices or the mandatory offer at an average price within the last some formula is there. You better study. In a way, it tries to protect the interest of other minority shareholders, not in complete coverage, but to some extent. As a result, it could move. You better check it for your learning. Last question. So, in short, give me an answer. What lessons that you learned from this particular case study with respect to sustainability of cooperation? Someone is just use. I can't think since there are many. Please mute your mics. Okay. What are the lessons that you learned from this case with respect to sustainability of a cooperation by safeguarding the interest of all the stakeholders?
The first thing is that the company must not only focus on the majority shareholders, but also all the stakeholders. Not the stakeholders doesn't mean that only the shareholders, but also like every stakeholder, like in the society. That's the first learning I would say.
Okay, thank you very much.
Apart from that,
Oh
sir,
yeah,
if
yes, please.
sustainable stakeholder management could be achieved if better regulations, frameworks, and the objectiveness of the experts is existing. And apart from that, when it comes to the articles of the association, the memorandum of association, such provisions could be stated to assure the equity of all the shareholders.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is a question we can take like a difficult question. Okay, thank you very much for your presentation and answering the questions. And all the best. Keep it up and read much more. And you guys have lots of capabilities of doing good things in addition to learning. Then, as I just told you, think of doing a very good research maybe in the next semester. Thank you very much. Just quickly, we'll move on to the second presentation, case 2.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I'm from group number 2. And in our group also, sir, like 6 members will be presenting.
Okay.
Due to the time constraint.
Right.
And I am Roshana. My name is, my CPM number is 17600.
Okay. You can start.
So I am Ravindu. My CPM is 17576.
Ravindu, 1 minute. Ravindu. Your CPM number?
17576.
573.
576.
Okay. Next.
My CPM is 17029.
Dasuni.
Yeah.
Number?
17029,
17029, right?
Yeah.
It's appearing there. No worries. Dasuni. Next one.
I'm Nabil Lukuheti, 16874.
Okay, your number is also there. 874. Good. Next.
So I am Nipun.
Nipun.
Yes, sir.
17. 597.
Yes, sir.
Next.
Sir, I'm Khalindu.
17529.
529.
Okay. 6 members. So who are the other members who are not going to present? Are they present there?
Yes, sir, all are present.
So can I see them? Next one.
I'm Vatsala Nimeshi.
Vatsala.
17042.
17042. You are not going to present, right?
No, sir.
Okay. Next one.
So I am Chetana.
Okay, Chetana.
My CPM is 17606.
17606. Not presenting.
Yes, sir, not presenting.
Next one. Only 8 members. You have 10. 2 are missing.
Hello, excuse me, sir.
So
I'm Nipun.
You already just.
So I'm not presenting, sir. We just.
Then out of the names, not presenting, then the Roshana.
He's presenting, sir.
Presenting. Then only 5 names, but he said 6 are going to present. I'm just going to reconcile it quickly.
Sir, shall I tell who are presenting?
Huh?
I'll tell the list of
members,
people.
like, so then only 5 members can be traced now. Who are the others? 2 members are missing. They are not present or not?
Sir, I'm Anrodhika.
They are seen to be not present. Okay, then you can present. I will just make a note on this and pass it to the coordinator. Okay, you can start, Roshan.
Good evening, all. I am Ravindu. Under case study 2, our topic is in deep water boardroom tussle at Asia Water Technology. In first, we will introduce the case background and then move on to the case question. Asia Water Technology was a company which was listed on Singapore Exchange in 2005. Therefore, the applicable corporate governance was CG code, which was issued in 2005. In Singapore, this code was jointly issued by the Singapore Exchange and the Monetary Authority of Singapore. When we consider about AWT, its business operations were mainly conducted in China under three segments such as water purification, wastewater treatment, and other auxiliary projects. This company was a capital intensive and they needed more funds for their investment. Due to the high risk of their short-term loans, company entered into a bond subscription agreement in August 2007. When the time passed, AWT started to face cash flow issues. Then they failed to maintain the debt covenant. As a consequence, second installment of bond agreement was cancelled. As a solution to cash flow issue, AWT received an offer from SI Infrastructure that was the subscribing of new shares and a right issue. The special thing was the exercise price of 2 cents when AWT shares were traded in the market at 9 cents. In this situation, one of shareholder in AWT, Mr. Venkatramana, questioned the actions taken by the board. He argued that AWT directors act without considering the best interest of the company. As a result, boardroom tussle was created and subsequently it affected the resigning of directors, removing of CEO and the appointment of new director board. When we move to the first question, it asks what are the key factors need to be considered when an organization considers a financial option. Long-term goals of the organization, available interest rate. Then the need for control among existing shareholders. That means some shareholders do not prefer to reduce their shareholder rights. Therefore, companies have to pass a resolution when they issue equity share. Then the debt covenant. In this case study also, we can see some debt covenants from bondholders, such as maintaining debt equity ratio and the need of developing restructuring plan. These covenants protect the lenders. Further, business have to consider current business structure. A leveraged company cannot think about funds from debt instruments. They have to think the future repayment terms and pledge to be placed in obtaining finances. These are the factors should be considered before considering the funding option. I will invite Dasuni to continue our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravidu. The second question is, in your view, did the old AWT board adequately discharge its duties? Do you think the board acted appropriately when the business started to deteriorate? The answer should be no, due to these reasons. The board had already known the situation there relating to deteriorate, but then did not get proper action for that and did not communicate that to the responsible person like those charged with governance or to the shareholders. AWT All Board only concerned about the bond subscription agreement when it's critical time. They did not discuss the further investment with their shareholders and try to depend only on bondholders' ideas. The board first entered the BSA with the intention of reducing the risk of short-term borrowing, but they failed to repay the short-term lending and instead of that, they invested in new projects at last. The board did not concern about the business operations. They also failed to complete a restructuring plan and did not undertake an adequate project company. When we think about OECD principles, the board members should act on a fully informed basis in good faith with due diligence and care. According to the above points I mentioned, this board did not act according to these principles. When we analyze our case, we just remembered a similar case, which is about the Enron Corporation in USA, which is a large energy commodity and service company ended up with bankruptcy as a result of hiding losses and gave the company big problems. When we move to the third question is, do you think the board could have done more to avoid the boardroom tussle? According to the information we gathered, the answer should be no. The board did not behave with any accountability and even did not communicate an issue regarding the company matters. They did not try to explain the reason for their misbehavior regarding the company. On behalf of that, they were trying to leave from the board with reasons which are not acceptable. There was no good leadership to handle the boardroom tussle since they did not mention anything about the position of chairman. The old board included the directors who had good competencies in several industries, but they did not have any specialists in finance and accounting fields, which resulted such a bad situation to the company relating to the capital financing. Mr. Venkatramana always tried to show the negative impact of SI infrastructure, but he did not provide alternative financial options for this matter. If we related this matter again with the OECD principles, the board should monitor the effectiveness of the company's governance practices and making changes as needed. But this Asia Water Technology did not act according to these type of corporate governance principles and did not do more to avoid the boardroom tussle. Over to you, Hilma.
Thank you, Dasuni. So let me start by looking at question number 4. That is, do you think the directors were resigning too easily? Do you find the reason for their resignation acceptable? Under what circumstances should a director resign? So first, I would like to give you a bit of background about reasons given by directors for their resignation according to the given case. So according to the given case, a time commitment, removal of other directors, and health issues were the reason for their resignation. Next, I would like to list out the circumstances that a director should resign. If directors disagree with strategic decisions taken by the board, if a director lost confidence in the integrity of the board, if the board acting dishonorably, or in a case that the company is embarked upon a policy that will lead to a future crisis. Likewise, as shown in the slide, these are the circumstances where a director should resign. So having said that, at this point, I would like to stress that according to the given case, reasons given by the directors of Asia Water Technology Limited for their resignation is not acceptable. Let me now move on to the question number 5, that is, identify any corporate governance deficiencies in AWT's board of director. So as you can see in the slide, all board comprised 6 directors and there was diversity of competencies with qualification in the areas of engineering, science, banking and business. So when it comes to new board, it comprised with 7 directors. So according to the Corporate Governance Code 2005 of Singapore, in board composition aspect, it required there should be an independent board with independent directors making up at least 1/3 of the board with diversified knowledge. So as I explained in previous slide, both old and new board composition fulfill this requirement as it comprised with above 1/3 of independent directors with diversified knowledge. But there were deficiencies with other aspect of the corporate governance. Like if it comes to the board's conduct of affair, it explains all directors must objectively take decisions in the interest of the company. But as my colleague explained earlier, AWT's directors had acted without considering the best interest of the company. Therefore, we can see that there was a deficiency in this aspect of the old board. Also, corporate governance explained that the chairman and CEO should be separate persons. But in AWT, there was not a clear division of responsibilities at the top of the company. Also, company had not established a nominating committee, a remuneration committee, and an audit committee. Also, company was not engaged in regular, effective, and fair communication with its shareholder. So these are the corporate governance deficiencies that we could see in the both old and new board of Asia Water Technologies. Over to you, Roshana.
Thank you, Hilma. Now I will discuss about the shareholders' power and the rights in appointing or removing directors of a company as per question number 6. When discussing about the shareholders' power to appoint or remove directors of a company, there are certain key factors that are needed to be considered. The company law in the respective country and the articles of association of the company are of high prominence among them. If I relate this issue to the Sri Lankan context, there are certain requirements that a person who shall be appointed as a company director should possess. For example, the age, whether he or she is insolvent, whether he or she is a natural person, or few of those factors. So if these requirements are fulfilled, the shareholders have the rights to appoint directors by passing a resolution in a shareholders meeting. But it should be remembered to get the recommendations of the nomination committee in making such appointments. The same way can be adopted to remove a director from office as per the Companies Act. But if the director under consideration is an executive director, that is more or less an employee of the company, there should be reasonable grounds to terminate his employment. Otherwise, he or she might seek legal assistance for unfair dismissal of employment. Therefore, considering these facts, the shareholders should be given the right to appoint and remove directors since they are the true owners and principals of a company. This is the same concept which is also established by the agency theory, which highlights that the board of directors should act on behalf of the shareholders and not based on their own self-interest. So if we relate the above incident to AWT, we can observe that there is a substantial shareholder who comes forward, pressures the board through an EGM, and removes the incumbent directors and also appoints new directors. This is definitely reasonable from the perspective of the shareholders since it was their money that was misused by the existing board. There were significant events and conditions that could have caused the company to face with going concern issues as well. So after considering these aspects, it is reasonable that any significant shareholder will stand up and speak up for the benefit of their own funds, which happened in the case of AWT as well. The removal of the incumbent board and the appointment of a new one would definitely have both the pros and cons, but with the conditions that existed and the direction that the company was heading, this action can be seen as beneficial overall. So to continue, let me hand over the presentation, Nadini.
Thank you, Roshana. If we move on to the next question, it's about our opinion on the intervention of Securities Regulator in the matter discussed above. According to our case study, is yes, we think that Singapore Exchange should have involved in this matter. But why do we need the intervention of Securities Regulator? AWT is a listed company in Singapore. Each shareholder has an interest over the company. The company and those who run it must get much value as possible for its shareholders. It should not sacrifice the shareholders' wealth for their own interest because substantial shareholders could raise their voice on any matter, but shareholders who have less number of shares could not. So for the protection of the shareholders and to ensure that markets are fair, efficient, and transparent, the intervention of a security regulator is essential. As you can see now, we noted 3 situations where we think that Singapore Exchange should have intervened. Issuance of large number of shares to a new investor, breach of financial covenants more than 2 times relating to bonds it issued. Also, the former board does not have a financial qualified director. In all these situations, board should closely monitor and give strict advices. Further, board should be referred for investigations. However, on 8th of September 2009, AWT's shares were suspended. But timely actions could have been taken since the problem began in 2007. So our last question is, who do you think the most responsible for the failure of AWT? What do you think? Is it regulatory authorities, employees, or the shareholders? No. Since it's about the most responsible party, we are in the opinion that the former board of directors are the most responsible. A board is elected to represent shareholders' interest as per the agency theory. So there's a fiduciary relationship between the board and the shareholders. According to our case study, the board has not acted in the best interest of the shareholders. Also, lack of communication between them has led to AWT failure. So the board has not informed the shareholders when required. So the accountability part has not been properly fulfilled by the board. The recent incident was in Sri Lanka. The former board of directors of a particular finance company was arrested and produced before the courts that they had persuaded the public to accept the deposits, indicating that the company was a well-run financial institution at a time of severe liquidity crisis. So based on all these facts, It's clear that the former board of directors are the most responsible for the failure of AWT, as they haven't properly directed and controlled the company on behalf of the shareholders. Over to you, Kalindu.
Thank you, Nadini. So wrapping things up on today's discussion, the Asia Water Technology, the boardroom tussle at Asia Water Technology. So on one hand, we attempted to emphasize the importance of the board composition, how important it is to have the right combination of independent and non-independent directors, how important it is to have the right combination of executive and non-executive directors, the importance of having the separation between the chief executive officer and the chairman. So we also want to touch on that. So also on the other hand, we also wanted to bring about the gravity of the financing decision to a company and how a multitude of factors play a huge role in evaluating financing options. So if I just take you through our case, we can see like in most of the cases, the financing decisions that they have taken, they were based on like one or two factors that we have just listed out, and we can see that short-sightedness kind of led this company to the ultimate insolvency. And on the subject of insolvency, we also want to talk about things such as the duties of the directors in situations such as insolvency, and also what are the circumstances in which the directors are expected to tender their resignations. But as you can see in the real world, there are plenty of situations where even though the company is insolvent, the board of directors is kind of in denial of their actions, and they are not accepting their failures. And in that case, how the shareholders with the as the principals, how they should engage in the process of removing these directors for the betterment of the company. So all in all, I hope you got a good idea about these aspects of the corporate governance through our discussion. Thank you very much for listening, and have a good night.
Okay, thank you very much for the nice presentation again. And for technical matters, one member is missing. Only 6 presented, 3 are there. And the member, I just traced the name.
Sir, I'm Anuruddhika.
AMAT Abesingha.
Sir, I'm Anuruddhika.
Right, CPM number 16833.
Sir,
Yeah?
hello, sir.
Sorry?
So she's talking. I think her mic is really low.
So no, can I see? Where is she? Can you, so she must be hearing me. So
yes, sir. She hears you, sir.
Yeah, can you just switch on your camera? Hello, what is her name?
Because she has turned on her camera. 16833 Anuruddhika.
Anuruddhika?
Yes, sir.
Anuruddhika, can you switch on your camera? Turn on your camera, please. So I don't see. I don't hear even. Anyway, let her join later. So we'll ask questions. Few questions. Okay. What happened to this particular company at the end? What is the end of this company? So present situation.
The company went on for a receivership.
Okay.
And their shares got suspended from trading, sir.
Okay, right. So maybe liquidated in situation. Okay, in the summary and in your presentation, so you present lots of facts and so nicely analyzed, and answers are given to the question. And in basic principles of good governance, which are mentioned in most of code of good governance practices, like provide basic principles pertaining to separations of officers and highlighting the importance of having non-executive directors in the board and maintaining the independence and all those things. Even in this company, in some like later on you found some contradictions and issues pertaining to this. How are we going to reconcile these things in their practices. So, do you have any evidence that at least symbolically they were there? For example, maybe I may be an independent director. If you look at the case, I don't know whether you found that information from the case or not. From the case, you may find that independent directors are there, that independence has been respected, non-executive directors are there. But when it comes to the real performance and the operations, so whether this independence has been practiced with a true sense, and whether directors have contributed in that way or not. So did you find any contradictions, or what kind of reconciliation that you can give with respect to this company?
In the sense like in the previous board, there were independent directors. But the problem with that was until like for 2 years, from 2007 to 2009, until shareholders raised their voice, like even independent directors did not take a proper action. Like they were borrowing money, taking loans and investing in huge projects without the ability of repaying the loans back. So like finally, they also went for another proposal of a company named SI Infrastructure, which should have diluted the existing shareholders' shares a lot. Then only a significant shareholder named Venkat Ramana raised their voice against the entire director board, claiming that they haven't done their job properly. So what we found out was like in the previous board, even independent directors haven't raised their voice. Even there were more independent directors than executive directors.
Okay, it seems like these independence and so-called good principles of governance are seen in the name boards, but not in practice.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you guys can think of doing a research like similar situation when you take all the annual reports. So corporate governance is fantastic. Fantastic. So you see all these characteristics, they simply comply. But if you dig into real operations and the transactions, especially related party transaction, if someone can examine the related party transactions, you may find out lots of issues, how they are within these networks. So the professionalism can be questioned. It would be a very good qualitative study if someone wants to do. Okay, then I'll ask the final question. The time is just running out. Again, the same question I asked from the other group as well. What did you learn by studying this particular case, especially in terms of corporate governance and in terms of practical situations where you are exposed? So most of those things are not seen in textbooks unless you like read this text. Even the case doesn't reveal much, but something may have been revealed. What did you learn from this particular case?
Most of the companies have symbolic way of showing their corporate governance, but they are not practically doing these things.
So what do you learn then? What are you learning? So that is a fact.
I think there should be some regulatories to monitor that.
Sorry, I didn't get.
I think, sir, some of regulatory parties should monitor their behaviors according to the corporate governance principles.
Then subsequent to that, another question can be raised. Okay, yeah, if someone...
So by learning this case, we examine the internal control of the company is very low because they already have debt governance about how they should repay their debt. But when they receive debt, they are going to invest in more capital products, capital investments. So the internal controls are very low. Hence, the board of directors act according to their will in this company. So by empowering, enhancing the internal control within the system, we can decrease these kind of scenarios. How board of directors not only going to do their will, but also consider about the what are the bonds with external parties.
Okay, good.
Something to
Yeah, yes, please. Others also can contribute.
In addition to that, sir, the board of directors not consider about the shareholders' best interest, and they not properly communicate the things what happen inside the organization. And there was a problem in the board composition also. We found that there is no director who is specialized in the financial sector, and the CEO, the position of the CEO also not segregated from that board position.
So something to be add from they received a offer from SI Infrastructure, that is that the board of directors try to give the shares per 2 cents, but the market price was 9 cents. That the new director, new person, shareholder, Mr. Vetkatramana, argued that they are not, they are try to give a 75 discount for the SI Infrastructure. If it is success, SI Infrastructure company equity increased to nearly 85%. Then if it is not success, the company called China General Water had a deal with their bondholders. If it is not successful, they ready to acquire 29 million worth of assets from the AWT. Then Mr. Venkatramana focused this SI Infrastructure, not the general China company is a subsidiary of SI Infrastructure. Mr. Venkatramana explained this. If the company had the control to identify this, it is better, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. Like, so relating to the same question, just give you a comment. Whatever it's said, and like corporations claim that MDs and lots of good governance practices. Of course, even though regulations, rules, monitoring, governance can look into these issues from a very broader perspective, from the interest of general public, interest of stakeholders, there are limitations. Somewhere down the line, so either they get used to these things and arrange some or other ways of bypassing this, and again to do the same practice of maximizing, or any other arrangements, maybe through coalitions of known people and connected interests and all those things surge and reappear in these processes all the time. This is what we have seen throughout the history of corporate governance, corporate practices, just going back to the formation of limited liability companies and expanding it up to ultranational, global, the corporation, multinational corporations in a monopolistic power holding situations. It could be something connected with the politics, economic system, and things like this. And finally, a society in which we live in, and mainly the mode of production, how value is created and it's being shared. Another research area, if someone wants, like these duality of so-called guardians, the corporate guardians. It is seen in other places as well. So maybe we have lots of evidence in Sri Lankan context. Okay, thank you so much. It's already 9:30. Almost we took 3 hours. Just try to finish it by 2.5 hours time. Anyway, it was really interesting. We'll wind up the today's session, participation. I will communicate. I'll do my part on the assessment. Regarding technical things, I will communicate with coordinator, that is Dr. Ajwad. All the best, and see you next week. If you have any question, please ask.
Excuse me, sir.
Does anyone have any question?
Sir.
Yes.
Sir, I'm Anuruddhika. I'm beginning.
I can't hear you.
Sir, I'm Anuruddhika.
Yeah, Anuruddhika. Okay.
Sir,
What happened to you?
Sir, my mic is not working
Huh?
properly. My mic is not working properly, sir.
Now it works.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. No problem. Like, but you will communicate. So maybe kind of communication gap between you and coordinator regarding the presentation. Even I may be wrong. I do not know. I'm under the impression that everyone has to present. No worries. Even if it has not been communicated to you properly, there would not be a big issue. I will take only the facts and what you presented and have you answered to the cases, the case and the basic. So we are given basic criteria to evaluate. Based on that, we'll evaluate. If there is any other issue about these technical things, you need to talk to that is the coordinator. Other than that, are there any other questions from the lesson or the cases? I hope even though you have questions, you may not ask since it is too late. Okay, no worries. So I also had a very wonderful session and discuss. So read a little bit more and be like very like open-minded of gathering information rather than believing in things. So question about the corporation practices, you would learn a lot about corporate governance, roles of directors. So next week we will discuss the balance part of corporate governance and risk management within corporate governance with new ideas as well. So the traditional mode of risk governance and the present and future risk governance modes. Those things will be discussed within the pretext of a corporation. So thank you very much. Good night to everyone.